What's up, BookTube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today I'm talking about all the books that I read in February. Of February brings us Black History Month, as well as Blackathon, which was created and hosted by Jessie over at Bow Ties and Books, which I will of course link down below for you guys to go and check out. I was on team sci-fi fantasy, so I spent the month reading mostly sci-fi and fantasy written by Black authors. There were a few random ones, but we'll get into that later on. Last month I read 7 books and DNF'd 1, which gave me a grand total of 2,077 pages read. So we'll start with my DNF, which was Escaping Exodus by Nicky Drayden. This was the group book for team sci-fi fantasy, and unfortunately I did not get very far in. I got through I think 11 pages of it. Somebody in the comments of my TBR video where I mentioned that I was going to be reading this one said that there's a lot of body horror in this and that it's not often like mentioned as a trigger warning, and I'm very glad that this person told me this, because like body horror is one of my biggest triggers. I have a huge phobia of anything to do with like any kind of body stuff, so I still gave it a shot because I was like, you know, maybe it won't be that bad, or maybe it'll be written in a way that I can handle, and I definitely could not. Within the first 11 pages there was just like language being used that was just like, oh god, I couldn't do it. So that is my one DNF for the month. I think it was actually my first DNF of the year too, so that's pretty good for me as well. I've mentioned this before, but I used to DNF like crazy. So the fact that we're like 2 months into the year and I've only DNF'd 1 book is like wild to me. Moving on to the books that I did finish, the first one was This Poison Heart by Kalynn Bayron. It's an urban fantasy about this girl who was born with a power to kind of control flowers and plants, and all the plants around her all want her attention. They want her to kind of come and make them grow, and so they will literally like uproot themselves to try and get closer to her, which can cause problems living in New York City when you walk down the street and like trees literally come out of the ground and destroy things trying to get close to you. So she has to keep a secret from everybody in her life aside from her parents. She was adopted as a baby, but then one day a lawyer shows up and tells them that the main character's birth mother's sister has passed away, and she left her this gigantic sprawling estate in upstate New York, and it's all hers. So they decide to spend the summer in this estate and kind of get a feel for it, see if they want to possibly move there. And then weird shit starts happening from there. People keep showing up to the house asking for elixirs and potions and all these things, and there's a like literal apothecary in the house, as well as some hidden rooms and like all these cool magical things happening around them, and the main character realizes that she probably comes from a family of witches, and there are some darker things happening and people trying to come after her for things that she has no idea about. But it was this like beautifully written, really fun, fast-paced fantasy with also a sapphic romance in there, which I also really enjoyed, and I'm hoping to see more of that in book 2. In terms of plot, I did actually manage to guess the majority of the plot twists, but I didn't actually mind that. It wasn't the most like inventive plot ever, but it was still really fun and just overall an enjoyable read. I found the main character to be a really fun perspective to follow, and I enjoyed all of her friendships and her kind of just trying to like navigate being a teenager while also dealing with all this magical shit happening in her life. And she's like having crushes and making friends and also learning about like her birth family and the history of her heritage and all these things. There was so much happening in this book, and again with the relationships, her relationship to her moms was so sweet. They're such a close-knit family. They rely on each other. They have like fantastic communication, and it was just so nice to read that. In YA books, especially like urban YA books, the parents are always so absent and they just have like no part in their child's lives as they're going through all this turmoil and like almost being killed by like demons and monsters and shit. So the fact that the main character's parents were so involved in this and they were supportive and they were trying to help as much as they could was just so refreshing to read, and I really appreciated that. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed it, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was close to a 3.5, but overall it was a 3, which is not a bad rating. People always say that a 3 star is a bad rating. It is not. It's just like, it was good. It just wasn't like the most incredible thing that I've ever read in my life, but I still really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for book 2. Next up was an arc that I got from NetGalley, and that one was A Quick and Easy Guide to Asexuality by Muldoon and Will Hernandez. This one is a non-fiction graphic novel, and the formatting of it was really interesting. The authors like drew themselves as characters in the book, and they just went over and explained all the different parts of asexuality and everything. So while it wasn't the most like detailed, in-depth discussion of asexuality, it's a very short book. It's like 75 pages or so, so I didn't think it was going to be like super detailed, but they did cover a very broad range of topics, and it kind of just like answered a bunch of like pretty common questions. And I thought it was really fun how they kind of like addressed like the questions that people might have, because what they would do is they would sometimes have like a random character pop in and be like, what about this or what about that, and then they would answer it within the text. So I thought it was really fun, and I was somebody who's like pretty well versed in all the different aspects of the LGBTQ plus spectrum. I didn't personally learn much from this one, and I did find the writing to be a little bit repetitive here and there, but overall it was still a great read, and it would definitely be helpful for somebody who knows like nothing about being asexual and wants to learn some of the nuances about it. And so this one I gave 4 stars, and this one comes out on March 29th. Next up was also an arc from NetGalley, and that one was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie. Oh my god, guys, this was such a good freaking book. You need to read this one. It's already out. It came out on, I think, the 22nd, so it's already out. Just go pick it up. Don't even listen to what I'm about to say. Just like pause this video, go to your local bookstore or their website, whatever, and just order it right now. Just do it, okay? Please. So this one is a YA fantasy steeped in Korean mythology. It follows the tale of the sea god's bride, and it's about this small village that has been wrecked by really bad storms for 100 years now, and they believe it's because the sea god is upset about losing his love. And so once a year they sacrifice the most beautiful girl in the village to the sea god in the hopes that he will find his true bride and finally be appeased and stop the storms. But this year the sacrifice is meant to be the betrothed of our main character's brother, and she could not bear the thought of her brother being so heartbroken, so she instead throws herself into the sea, and she is taken down to the spirit world where she learns that the sea god is actually in a enchanted sleep and has been for the last 100 years, and she only has 1 month to figure out how to break the curse and stop the storms before she herself becomes a spirit. She makes friends with demons and gods and spirits along the way, and it's just such a really fun, fast-paced book. There's a beautiful romance in there as well, and I just adore this book. I did do a full video review for this one, so I will leave that linked for you guys down below if you want to hear more thoughts on it. But I gave this book a full 5 stars. It was just incredible. It was so beautifully written. I would also definitely recommend the audiobook for this one because oral storytelling is very important to this book and kind of like the myths surrounding it as well. So it just felt right to be listening to this one over audio and have the story be told to you. It was definitely the right call, so if you're going to pick this one up, which you should, go for the audiobook. Next up was Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. This one is a middle grade, kind of. It's labeled as a middle grade and follows a 12-year-old girl, but it has some extremely heavy topics in there, so I'm not sure if it's actually middle grade. And like, of course, middle grade can follow like hard topics, but this was like a lot. So I'm not really sure where to class it, but either way, it doesn't matter. This one takes place in a town called Lucille after the revolution has happened and all of the monsters are gone, but the monsters are people who are like bigoted and ignorant of things and just like bad people generally. So Lucille is considered to be a utopia and there are no monsters left, there are no bad people left in the world, or in this town at least. And it follows a young girl named Jam who finds her mother's painting in her studio one day, and it's this like really cool looking monster thing, like a creature kind of monster, not like their version of monsters. But she actually cuts herself and bleeds on the painting, and then the creature comes to life and tells Jam that there is a monster in Lucille and it has to go and hunt it down and kill it. But given that they're in this utopian society, nobody's going to believe Jam or the creature, who Jam calls Pet, that there's a monster in the town, so they have to kind of do their own investigating and figure out what's going on. Things get very, very dark, so definitely look up some trigger warnings for this one before going into it. It deals with some really heavy topics, but this was a beautifully written story. The writing was incredible. I loved the themes in it and the friendships and the relationships. This is a very, very queer book, and I loved that. The main character, Jam, she is transgender. There's like openly polyamorous families. Like everybody is just like openly accepting of being queer, and it was wonderful to read. The scene at the very beginning where Jam is like recounting the memory of when she told her family that she's trans, and their reaction to it made me cry so hard. I had to stop reading and just like sit there and cry for a little while because it was just so beautiful, and like just the idea that like one day our world could be that, where like young trans kids can just tell their families and they're just immediately accepted. There's no questioning of it. They're just loved. It was just so beautiful. It made me so happy in that regard. But otherwise though, like the storytelling was so beautifully done. I love the character of Pet. I thought it was a really interesting character. I did not expect it to go where it went in that sense, and it was just like weird and wild but so fascinating. Overall, I had a fantastic time with this book and I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm currently reading Bitter, which is the prequel to it. I almost finished it in time for this wrap up, but not quite, so it'll be on for next month. After that, I read Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. Y'all, oh my god, the hype is real for this one. I've been seeing so many people talking about this book for months, saying how good it was, and like it was kind of on my radar, but I hadn't actually added it to my TBR until recently, and I'm so glad that I finally like listened to the hype and picked this one up. I don't read a lot of middle grade, that's why I was like kind of hesitant to read it, but this one was so good. It follows our main character named Amari, who is this 12-year-old girl whose brother had disappeared a few months ago. The police just assumed that he was probably involved in some drugs or gang related things because they're a black family from a not so nice neighborhood, so they're doing like nothing to help them. But before he disappeared, her brother was saying that his job involved some kind of like top secret like government kind of thing, and he couldn't talk about it, he had to keep it a secret. And then one day Amari gets a very strange package from her brother inviting her to come and apply for the like summer internship so that she could one day also do his job too. So of course she accepts and finds out that her brother was actually a like kind of a superhero. He has powers. He's part of the Bureau of Supernatural Investigations, which is a top secret society full of all kinds of creatures. There's like witches and dragons and all these things, and she is now part of that as well. And so she's using this opportunity to not only, you know, make some friends and kind of find her place in the world, but also trying to find her brother. This book was so much fun. I didn't do a great job explaining it there, but because there's a lot more to it than that, but just take my word for it, it was good. The plot was so much fun. I love the friendships between Amari and the friend that she makes. I loved the themes of, you know, just like the things that 12-year-old girls have to go through. Amari is being bullied, she's feeling like an outsider, all these things happening. This one I also gave 4.5 stars, and I'm so excited for the sequel. I think it's coming out in August, I want to say. I'm not positive, but like not super far from now, but like I want it now. I want it right now. And then after that one, I read The Kindred by Alicia Dow. This was so freaking good. I had a lot of good books this month. This one is a YA sci-fi, and it has some of my favorite tropes in there, but I'll get to that in a second. There was a revolution that happened where the poorer societies kind of stood up against all the rich and the noble and everything. And so in order to appease them, they decided to start the Kindred program. And so at birth, every person is paired with somebody from a different class. It's always one high class and one low class person is paired together with this mind connection where they can hear each thought from each other, and they just have this connection for their entire lives. That way everyone's voice can always be heard and the different classes can better understand each other. So in this one, our main characters are Kindred. They're Joy and Felix. Joy is from the poorest planet in their entire solar system. Meanwhile, Felix is a royal. He's like not really in line for the throne. He's like the cousin or something like that. But he could be in line for the throne if things go terribly wrong for the entire royal family, which it does. So the entire royal family gets killed and people are after Felix because they think that he killed everybody in order to have the throne. And in this one, if a kindred pairing has such a deep connection, if the one dies, so can the other one. So Felix knows that somebody is going to be going after Joy to try and kill her in order to kill or at the very least hurt him, because they're so close. They have this beautiful connection, and so he races off to her planet and saves her. And so their very first time meeting in person is when he is taking her on a stolen ship and they have to crash land on Earth in order to try and escape the people trying to kill them. And then they just get to like navigate life on Earth and trying to figure out how humans work, which that is one of my favorite tropes in sci-fi. I love that. It's just so much fun. So that's kind of like the gist of the plot. There's a lot more going on here, but that's the most that I can say without spoiling things. This was such a good book. The best part of this was the relationship between Joy and Felix. From I think it was like 3 pages in and I was already like had that like heart tugging feeling of joy just like reading their relationship. They are so close from the get-go. They're like the best of friends. They love each other with their entire heart and soul, and of course you know it's gonna be a romance, so like once the romance kicks in, it was so good. Oh my god, it was amazing. They were just so in love and just so wonderful. Their characters were so nuanced and had so much to them. I especially loved how Joy being plus size was handled in this one. Joy does have a whole lot of like internalized fat phobia, so keep that in mind if you're sensitive to that. She is very self-conscious about her size. But some of the things that Felix would say about her, just like, oh my god, every single time that Joy would like feel subconscious about her body, Felix would hear her thoughts, constantly telling her how beautiful she is and all of her curves, and it was just so good. It was so beautiful. There's also asexual rep in here as well as pansexual. There's different genders in here. Everything is just like very openly queer and wonderful, and this was just fantastic. This one I also gave 5 stars, and it's probably my favorite book of the year so far. I can't pick between this one and The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, but like one of those two so far has been my best book of the year, and I can't get enough of it. It was so good. And then the last book that I read this month was Bad Fat Black Girl, Notes from a Trap Feminist by Sesali Bowen. This one is a non-fiction, partially memoir, but also a study of a certain kind of feminism, and it was excellent. This author, Sesali Bowen, she quoted the term trap feminism, and so this is her kind of talking about what that means to her personally, as well as just means in general. There were a lot of references obviously to like trap music, which I don't know much about, so I got a little bit lost there, but that's not the author's fault. That's just, I don't know much about like popular culture, I guess. So I didn't quite get all the nuances that she was talking about in this book, but I was able to understand the gist of what she was saying at least, and it was so fascinating to read, and this one was definitely very eye-opening. It was just like a really fascinating book talking about like different experiences of womanhood and how especially Black women relate to trap feminism, how that influences their life and their life experiences. So I would definitely recommend this one. I don't read much nonfiction, so I really have no idea like how to review this. I don't know how to like talk about a nonfiction book, so I'll just leave that there, I guess. And this one I gave 4 stars. So those are all the books that I read in the month of February. This was a fantastic reading month. I read so many amazing things and like lots of like high ratings, which I love, and definitely lots of books that I will be thinking about for the rest of time. But let me know if you read any of these books or what your best book of the month was. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!